Hello and welcome. In this lecture video, we'll be doing quick check problems. All these quick check problems deal with issuing bonds at par, at a premium, at a discount, and also review those associated journal entries with each of those scenarios, okay? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause the lecture video, and I want you to do quick check problem 1, and then check it, and then we'll do the exact same thing through quick check problem 5. So the same process, pause the lecture video, do the quick check problem, restart it, and then check your work, okay? Hello and welcome back. So with this first quick check problem, we have our 5-year 6% bonds, $100,000 par value, issued at a price of $91,893. Interest is paid semi-annually, and the bond's market rate is 8%. First question, are they issued at a discount or a premium? It's a discount. How do we know that? The contract rate is less than the market rate. Also, you can see the price, this is how much cash you get, is less than the par. So it's issued at a discount. The journal entry to issue these bonds, debit to cash, debit to the discount on bonds payable. How did I get this? I took $100,000 minus how much cash? $8,107. And then a credit to bonds payable for the par. What is the amount of interest expense? And then also I went ahead and calculated out the full journal entry. So our interest to bondholders is always equal to our par value times the contract rate, so $3,000. And then our amortized plus our amortized discount. Here is our total discount. And remember that this is 5-year bonds semi-annually, so 10 total payments. 810.70 is the amortized discount per payment. So then our journal entry to pay the interest, debit to bond interest expense for the amount that we have to pay our bondholders plus our amortized discount, $3,810.70, credit to the discount on bonds payable of $810.70, and then a credit to cash for $3,000. Okay, I hope you got that right. Let's take a look at the next one. Henderson Company, one of my many companies. Henderson Company issues 8% 10-year bonds with a par value of $350,000 semi-annual interest payments. On the issue date, the annual market rate is 10%. Contract rate, market rate. That implies a selling price of $87.50. So remember, as we talked about in the first lecture video for the chapter, that the price of bonds is stated in terms of percentage of par value. So this is saying that these bonds are selling at 87.5% of the par value of $350,000. So to calculate the price, which is how much cash I get, I'm just going to do that for you. Take my $350,000 times my 0.875, which equals my 306,250. Okay, so I wanted to do that one for you. Now let's look at the rest of this problem. I'm going to skip down here. What's the total amount of bond interest expense recorded on the first interest payment, and then journal entries to record the issuance of these bonds? So here I want you to give me the journal entry for recording bond interest expense. Here I want you to give me the journal entry to issue these bonds. Okay, so I want you to give me the full journal entry here to record bond interest expense. And it says, what's the total amount of bond interest expense that would be recorded over the life? So after you calculate the debit to bond interest expense for the first interest date, for the first interest payment, all you have to do is multiply that number times 20. Why 20? 10-year bonds, semi-annual, you will do this journal entry 20 times. So what you can do is when you do it here, the debit to bond interest expense, multiply it times 20, and then that's the total amount of bond interest expense that would be recognized over the life of these bonds. So now I want you to pause the lecture video, give it a try, and then we'll check your work. Okay, so let's see how you did. So we said this is how much cash we get. This is our debit to cash. Debit to cash, $306,250. This is our par value. So the $350 minus our $306,250 gives us the discount on bonds payable right over here. So it's a debit to cash, debit to the discount on bonds payable, credit to bonds payable right there. Part C, let's look at the total amount of bond interest expense. And I asked you to do the full journal entry, okay? So we can do over here with our journal entry is we have to say what's our interest to bondholders, our payment to our bondholders is going to be equal to par value times the contract rate. 350 times 0.04 because the contract rate is 8%, but it's semi-annual. That gives us $14,000. That's how much we will credit cash for. And then we have to amortize our discount. Remember, our total discount, $43,750, divided by 20. Why 20? 10-year bonds, semi-annual. That gives us our $2,187.5. Then we can look at our journal entry. We add those two, the $14,000 plus that $2,187.5. That gives us our debit to bond interest expense. Debit bond interest expense for $16,187.50. Credit to our discount on bonds payable for $2,187.50. And then our credit to cash for our $14,000. Remember, that was the par value times the contract rate. Part B says, what's the total amount of bond interest expense that will be recognized over the life of these bonds? There's two different ways that you could do this. You could take the $16,187.50, which is the debit to bond interest expense right there, and multiply it times 20, because I would be doing that journal entry 20 times, debiting bond interest expense 20 times, because it's 10-year bonds, semi-annual. That gives us a $323,750. Or another way I could do it is I could say, here's the total amount that I will pay my bondholders in interest. Remember, that's different than interest expense, because interest expense equals the amount that I pay them plus the discount. That will be equal to my $14,000, which we calculated as my par value times my contract rate, times 20, because remember, it's 10-year bond, semi-annual, gives us $280,000. So that's how much I'll pay my bondholders in interest over 10 years. Plus the discount, $43,750, gives us $323,750. Either which way, you get the same answer. Why plus the discount? Because look over here. Remember, that discount is included in my debit to bond interest expense. Okay? It's included in my debit to bond interest expense, so I can just add it in total right over here to answer this question, which is what's the total amount of bond interest expense that's recognized over the entire life of the bonds, would be equal to how much you pay your bondholders plus the total amount of the discount. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at number 3 and number 4 and number 5. And so what I think you should be able to do now is I want you to pause the lecture video and I want you to do number 3, number 4, and number 5, and then come back and check your work. Because after we've done those first two, you should really be able to do these 3 now on your own. Number 5 is a premium bond. These 2 deal with discounts, okay? All right, so pause the lecture video and then come on back. Okay, welcome back. Let's see how you did. So this first one, in here first, the company issued and sold $400,000, 7%, 10-year bonds payable, received proceeds of $396,000. It's semi-annual. Even though it doesn't say semi-annual, you can infer that by seeing the 2 days that they make interest payments. Use a straight line method, prepare the journal entry. So we have to figure out how much cash we pay our bondholders, which is always par value times contract rate. Contract rate is 7%. But it's semi-annual, so $400,000 par value times 0.035 gives us the $14,000. And then we add in our amortized discount, which is the $400,000 par minus the cash proceeds, gives us $4,000. We divide it by 20 because it's a 10-year bond, semi-annual, gives us $200. That means our debit to bond interest expense is $14,200. Our full journal entry is therefore debit to bond interest expense $14,200. Credit to our discount on bonds payable for $200, credit to cash for $14,000, which is how much I pay my bondholders. The next one is pretty similar. 5-year bond, 7%, par value of $100,000. This is the 97,947. So you know right away they issued it at a discount. So we take, again, similar to what we did before, this is how much we pay our bondholders. Par value times contract rate. Contract rate is 7%, but it's semi-annual. So times 0.035 gives us the $3,500 plus the discount that will be amortized, which will be equal to our $100,000 minus the cash proceeds divided by 10 because it's 5-year bonds, semi-annual, gives us the $205.30. So then our debit to bond interest expense, we add those two together. That becomes our debit to bond interest expense, $3,705.3, credit to the discount on bonds payable for $205.30, and then credit to cash for $3,500, which was our par value times our contract rate. This last one is a premium bond. So let's see how you did. So on January 1st, the company issues bonds dated January 1st, par value of $300,000. The bonds mature in 5 years. Contract rate is 9%. Interest is paid semi-annually. Why is this a premium? Look, contract rate 9%. Market, you're paying more than market. Everybody wants to buy your bonds. Therefore, the amount that you can sell it for, which is the premium, is above the par value. This is how much cash the company receives. Okay. So the journal entry record our first interest payment. So as opposed to the discount where we calculated the cash payment to bondholders plus the amortized discount, when we calculate bond interest expense for our premium, it's the cash paid to bondholders minus the amortized premium. So our cash payment to bondholders is always par value times contract rate. Contract rate is 9%, but it's semi-annual. Gives us the $13,500 minus the amortized premium, which is my $312,177, minus my par divided by 10. Why 10? It's 5 years, semi-annual, so 10 total payments. Gives me my $1,217.7. This means my debit to bond interest expense is $12,282.30. Debit to bond interest expense, $12,282.30. Then I debit my premium on bonds payable for the $1,217.7, and then I credit cash for $13,500, which is my cash payment to bondholders, which we calculated by taking the par value times the contract rate. Okay, I'm going to end this lecture video now. The next lecture video will cover bond pricing. How did we calculate this price of the bond? That's what we'll talk about in the next lecture video. Thanks.